Dustin Dopirak from the Bloomington Herald-Times with us. How are you, sir?
Doing well, Jim. How are you?
Cannot complain. Dustin Schutte as well. How much football did you get a chance to watch?
A little, not much. Tried to make the
Me
most
either.
of the last weekend without football.
I did. I saw more high school football on ESPN that night than I think I saw college football that day. But same.
Yeah, we spent as much of Saturday out and about as possible, just for because after this, our Saturdays are shot. So
I figured I could watch Illinois this Wednesday night at 11 o'clock or 10 o'clock or something. It's on.
Yeah, they'll have a replay.
I've got them all. Yeah, I'll record them all just to get a look-see.
You guys didn't think that Hawaii at Vanderbilt at 10:30 kickoff was appointment television?
I checked on it. I was checking on it because early on Hawaii was up.
Yeah, they were.
And I knew Vanderbilt was a favorite, but I'm like, it's Vanderbilt. They had to fly 8 hours. But then they erupt for, 35 points in the third quarter or something and just smoked Hawaii. I'm like, okay, well, there goes that 8-hour flight hurting them. That didn't bother them a bit.
Hey, people forget they're leading the SEC right now.
I was just getting ready to say they're half a game. They're half a game in front of in
Alabama,
the SEC.
Georgia.
Yep.
If their coach was Lee Corso, he would be he would be tweeting out the standings right now. I'd be tweeting out the standings. How's your weekend, Dustin? What's new with you, brother?
Good, man. Good. Yeah, no, like I said, tried to take it in as much as possible. Wife and I did a whole bunch of stuff. We went to an Indy Indians game on Friday night.
Okay, cool.
Went to the Feast of the Lanterns up here in Indianapolis. It's kind of like local. It's on the east side where we're at. So we just try to take it in. Took the dog out for a hike yesterday. Just did the most, like, squeeze the last remaining marrow out of summer before football season. Which I think is important. You get close to football and you're like, okay, we got to embrace fall. Like, no. Like, I got rules there. Like, you can't drink pumpkin lattes, pumpkin beers, pumpkin anything. No fall stuff. Until you take every bit out of August before you finally.
Because
the moment you not going to be fun. Not that football season isn't awesome, but you take in summer when you can do it.
Yes, because the moment you do that, you've given up. You've given up your rights to summer.
Exactly. Hold on to your rights to summer until they are finally taken away from you, and then embrace the fall thing. That's where I'm at.
I'm the exact opposite. As soon as the opening kickoff, my house is already decorated with all the fall stuff. I just go all in with fall once that first kickoff is here. So, but good for you. I do love summer. It goes way too fast. And like you said, once college football hits, then it's a madhouse for your weekends for the next 4 months.
You wake up and it's November.
Exactly.
It's one game after another, and it just takes you, which is, again, it's not a bad thing, but it's like, especially when we're covering it, like you are roped in somewhere on Saturday, and then all the surrounding hours or whatever, you're trying to find out what everybody else is doing. And so it's just like every Saturday you're thinking about college football, and then every Sunday you're getting as much NFL as you can. So it's like your weekends are, at the end of the day, way too much football. So it's like when there's no football to take you, to grab your attention, you have to do stuff.
I don't think people truly understand. I love the noon games. I know that's not great for tailgating, but even with a noon game, if you're covering the game, that's an 8-hour day.
Yeah.
At least an 8-hour day with pre-game, post, and then it's not a normal. It's usually kind of worn out. They're tiring. It's a more tiring day for some reason. But fun.
Football's one day. Yeah, football's a long day. Basketball's like about a 4 or 5 hour commitment.
Yes,
football is an 8-hour commitment.
It is amazing how long. It is amazing how much it really adds on
more
both
humans.
ends.
There's just more people. There's more stuff. Like and whatever you're doing, whether you're radio, whether you're TV, whether you're print, like you each have your own kind of things that are just multiplied by the size of it. We got to be there for we got to be in the building watching stuff an hour early, because the most important thing that's going to happen on Friday is we see what quarterback trots out first, and
Right.
like, and you got to see what's going on in warmups, like all that kind of stuff. Figure out if anybody's hurt, because we're going to ask today, and they're not going to tell us. Basically, if anyone's going to be injured and missing this game, we're going to get sidestepped on that today, so we won't find out until about an hour prior, maybe hour and 15 minutes prior or whatever. So yeah, it's long.
I'm not.
We shouldn't complain though, because everyone's gonna be like, "Dude, you cover football for a living. Shut up." Fair.
I'm like, I don't care.
This is one of the things that I used to complain about, and I used to get roasted for it. I always would complain about the Big Ten having Friday night games, and it's like, well, it's got to be easier. It's only one game to cover. And this was when I was covering the entire Big Ten. I'm like, imagine getting called into work on Sunday night. I mean, there are worse things you can be doing. I totally agree. I loved covering it, but at the same time, I'm like, imagine you've got all of your free time. Monday is there, and then all of a sudden the Big Ten says we're gonna have this Friday night kick. It's like getting called into work on Sunday at 5 p.m. before you got to get there at 7 a.m. on Monday. So
right, exactly what it is.
I from a fan's perspective, yeah, sure. Friday night, it's the only game in town. Cool, that's awesome. From the journalistic standpoint, it sucks.
Well, speaking of Friday night, man,
hate it too. Tom Allen hates it. You guys know that.
Oh yeah. Well, he's a high school football coach. Speaking of Friday night, the Illini come calling, and they took care of Wyoming easily without having to do a lot. The quarterback, Tommy DeVito, he's 24 years old. That says a lot. That makes you mature.
No, it doesn't. You were 24 once. That's not accurate.
Those
18, people, it does.
Those people, it makes those people, not this 24-year-old. I'm talking about the normal 24-year-olds. As far as far as whom you're competing against, generally, you're probably
right. Yeah. You're
a
grown-up quarterback at that point. Whether you're a grown-up is a different story.
And that's what Illinois needs. They need that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I mean, they have a special talent at running back. I think obviously, like from what I did watch on Saturday, I think that was pretty clear that Chance Brown is the guy. He's a real dude. And I mean, what he had he had 115 on his first 9 carries, and it was like, okay, they're just not stopping this dude. So yeah, no, that's gonna be the serious issue. And but DeVito is plenty good enough to manage the situation. And is a veteran. It's a guy that's got experience, got won games in the past. Those two as a combination is not an easy out. And yeah, I think I saw somebody send us a message on here that they defended pretty well. I mean, I don't know that this is the finest version of Wyoming that we've ever seen as far as offense. I mean, Josh Allen played at Wyoming, and I think we've seen stud wide receivers come out of Wyoming, turn into NFL guys. They especially back in the day when the Mountain West was just flinging it all over the place. They've had some dudes there, and this is not the best version of that, but still, they held them without much, basically. So those pieces make for it's going to be that's a difficult matchup for IU for sure.
Well, this is a Wyoming. We don't know how good they are. You're correct on that, but you look at their quarterback stat lines: 5 of 20 for 30 yards, no touchdowns and an interception. And you look at how poorly Indiana threw the ball last season. I mean, I understand there's a lot of different pieces. There's going to be a new quarterback, we think. There's going to be some new wide receivers, new offensive coordinators, so you don't know what you're looking at. But if I look at that stat line, even though we don't know how good Wyoming is, I'm a little concerned about Indiana being able to throw the football. But I mean, it's probably a little bit more worrisome because Tom Allen has been so secretive throughout this entire offseason. You really haven't gotten a look at Connor Bazelak or who the wide receivers are going to be. I think there's just a lot of mystery. And then you look at what Illinois' defense did, and I think that adds a little bit more, I guess, worry would be the right phrase.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, we've got to see a little, obviously. We've had some open periods of practice. We've got to see some of these guys, and then they talk about them. So you kind of piece together, all right, what are you seeing versus what are these guys talking about? But
different guys who touch the football here for Illinois.
Oh, shoot, that's my bad. That's
I was like, I thought that was John. Boy, John was getting
I was
ready
like,
to
what
go.
are you doing, John?
like,
Always me, of course. Okay.
No, that was my fault. I checked the box score on ESPN and then they had those auto plays.
Yes, I hate when that happens. That happens to me
Dustin
all
was
the time.
talking about the box score. I'm like, I better look at this because I haven't looked at it in a minute to make sure I know what I'm talking about. And then I left it open, and then after 30 seconds or 45 seconds on ESPN, they autoplay a video and they have the audio, and that's what happened. So my bad. Back what we were saying. Anyway, no, talking about we've got to see some of these dudes. We've got to see Cam Camper play a little bit. We got to see, and they love him. They're huge fans of him. They like Emery Simmons a lot. They like what Donovan McCulley is going to be. I don't think they think he's ready yet to be necessarily a starter and like the best receiver on the team. But I think they think eventually he's going to be the best receiver on the team, whether it's this year or next year or whatever, or in the future. They have guys they like. They like Sean Shivers. And we've got to see them run around a little bit. Obviously, we don't get to see a lot of 11 on 11, and mostly 11 on 11 we do see. We're sworn to secrecy because, God forbid, you tell them that they run a spread offense like everybody else does. They'll never see that coming if we tell them, if we don't tell them. But it's just, again, after they were so bad at it last year, it's almost like you need to see sort of evidence that they can throw the ball against an opponent at all, and that they can block at all, and because it was just that bad. And so, I think they'll be a better passing team. They'll be able to throw the ball in Illinois, but I won't know that until I actually see it. There's got to be this team has to provide evidence that it can move the football at all, because again, the last time you saw them play other teams, they couldn't. I mean, they were just utterly, just completely inept on offense in the last month of the season. Now, again, they were on their third and fourth string quarterback at that point. McCulley, as good of an athlete as he is, was not prepared to play quarterback at the Big Ten, not because doesn't have the talent or the skill or whatever, but you saw the difference of when you get there in July, or if you get there in June and you don't get spring practice and you get thrown in the fire after you've been the 3 for most of the fall and you've been running with the scouts, that's not time. That's not enough to make you a quarterback. You just saw just the difference there. That doesn't mean, I think McCulley could have won the job. I think he could, you would see a much more developed guy if he came back and stayed a quarterback this year and didn't ask to go to wide receiver, but at that point couldn't do anything. So Indiana needs to show some evidence that it can move the football, because the last image we have of it is just them being totally inept.
Absolutely, and I think they're going to be led by the defense. Obviously, that's the most experienced side coming back, and you've got Tom Allen going back to that. So that Indiana's going to have to rely on that defense to lead them, kind of like they did last year, where they did. If they had just had a competent offense, they could have had a successful season. Maybe not a great season, but they have to agree with. They have to have a competent offense, one that can move the ball, that can run the ball, and can throw the ball. I'm not saying they have to throw for 80-yard touchdowns every drive, but they've got to be able to do what Illinois did against Wyoming and just the practice. All they did was run the ball, and Tommy DeVito threw 37 passes, but for a total of 194 yards. Yeah, he averaged 5 yards a throw. They're just working on their quick hits. They're just working on running and throwing the quick. So they're letting the long passes, deep passes come. But we'll see what Indiana has Friday. But I'm hopeful for their defense that they're going to be able to stand up and put their offense in much better positions than they were put in last year.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the other part about the defense, obviously, was it was never healthy. I mean, it was barely healthy. I mean, the defense had its own problems, but a lot of that came down to their best players, other than Micah McFadden and Cam Jones. A bunch of them missed time. Obviously, you barely saw Tywan Mullen last year. You saw him have a fantastic game against Western Kentucky, and I think late in that game is when he injured his ankle, and after that, it got rough. I think they've reloaded where they've lost guys. Obviously, Micah McFadden is a significant loss. He just really was holding that group together last year entirely, and it seems like he's playing well enough that he should get a roster spot with the Giants. But I mean, they've reloaded, I think, in important positions. I think they're happy with what they have at linebacker. I think they like what they're getting out of Aaron Casey, but I think they like both of those transfers and Bradley Jennings and Jared Casey. They love Jared Casey's speed. They keep talking about that. I think Tom Allen said he's one of the fastest 3 players on the defense. So it seems like they've reloaded there. Defensive line, I think, is going to be an interesting spot. There's a lot of dudes that they like, but they barely got any production out of that last year. And the only guys who got sacks in the D line were Ryder Anderson and Weston Kramer. Both of those guys are gone. So you return 0 sacks on the offensive line or on the defensive line. So that's an issue. But they love what Lance Bryant's doing at the Bowl. They like Miles Jackson and how he's pushing Lance Bryant. They like a bunch of those guys. They like Nick James, the freshman. They like the Ole Miss transfers. They're I think pleased with what they're getting there now. I guess you have to see if it's actually going to show up and get production. But I think especially in the second and third levels, they're really happy with what they have. And again, a big thing is just that third level in the secondary, they have their guys back. Where just last year they were, they just never had a full complement after I think week 1.
With Nebraska losing over the weekend, their first game, every game is basically now it's going to become the Scott Frost watch, and which is horrible. I'm not even a fan of his, but it's horrible for the team because it's like they can't focus on the season. They've got to focus on that. And I'm like, dude, I mean, if they're going to fire him, they're going to fire him. If he lost to Indiana at home, I still don't know that they would fire him during the season, but that would be it. It'd be over then.
Apparently, I just saw this. So it's just I don't know how vetted this is, but I saw this pop on Twitter that his buyout goes down by $8 million or something like that. It goes down to 7.5 from something that's 5 figures, or not 5 figures. I'm sorry, 8 figures. And I can't remember. It goes down significantly after the Indiana game. Yeah. So it becomes a lot cheaper to buy out Scott Frost.
Wait a minute. I have never heard of that happening during in season.
Me neither, and I don't know why you would have that. I have no idea why you would have an in season.
Well, is that not a further slap in the face? Because he's already previously made comments about scheduling to the Big Ten. Why don't you schedule us with Indiana more? That comment, whatever that comment was.
No, it would be it would be the richest of ironies if Scott Frost loses to Indiana at home and then gets fired immediately thereafter. That would be that would be magnifique right there. I mean, Fred Glass is still mad about that. Fred Glass was mad about that for years.
And they would. I think he would get fired
on Twitter as a retired man and just celebrate that anyway. If that's what happened.
If he loses to Indiana at home, I think he.
Wait,
that's it. I mean,
is that the full story though? Is that all? Is that what he said? He just wants to schedule Indiana more, or was there more to that story that I'm
sure there was more to that story, which I think Fred used as motivation for IU at the time. I think it was some kind of Big Ten meeting where he was saying that he thought his non-conference schedule was unfair, basically that his crossovers were too often, somebody brutal or whatever, and said, we ought to get to play Indiana with somebody like Indiana more or whatever. And Fred Glass jotted that down and said, okay, I'm going to remember that. And then used that whenever Indiana played in 2019. They played at Nebraska in 2019 and told those guys and said, this is something that, we think you should be motivated by. Nebraska wishes they could play you more, so, make them pay for that.
Fired up Tom Allen.
I'm sure there's more to that. I can't remember what the meeting was or why there was a reason. There might have been – Scott Frost might have had a point. I can't remember who they were playing crossover games about that point. I don't know if they were getting Michigan and Penn State every year or something like that, or Ohio State or something. And was sort of the point hey, you're kicking the crap out of me. This isn't fair. How about you tone it down a notch? And everybody does that. I think when it comes to this division situation where Scott Dolson made a crack, and it's the other way, and it's better to do it with the teams that you're sick of playing that are beating you up. But like when I saw him do it this Bloomington press club meeting, he was like, yeah, like as far as divisional play is concerned, you know, like we get the honor of getting to go places like Ohio State and Penn State and Michigan every other year and having them come to our place. We would just love to pass around that honor to some other people. And so like that was well done. Like, I mean, basically, but it's tough to walk that wire when you're ultimately just saying like you there is a gap here
right.
between, you know, the top of the Big Ten and the bottom of the Big Ten. And you know, like the top of the Big Ten is so well heeled and has such advantages on the rest of it. And if you have to play those guys, it's, you know, like it deeply affects your season. It affects your ability to perform above your standing. And, you know, and that's Indiana's situation in general. I mean, you go into this season and with Ohio State looking like it can win the whole thing, you know, Michigan back to being top 10, you know, Penn State being fringe top 25, Michigan State having woken up after having gone in a hole for a little bit. And you're just like, okay, well, that's 4 losses right out of the gate. You know, like 8-4 is the highest you can reasonably aspire to. And, you know, then from there, it's like, okay, then you have these other games that are tough, but you say, okay, like right out of the gate, like best you can do it is 8-4 and 5th in the league, you know, whereas like on the West, it's, you know, like that's going to be open every year. If you happen to trip up Wisconsin, you've got to crack at it. You know, you've got to crack at playing in Indy in December, and then you're going to get housed by Ohio State by 40, but that's okay. You know, you'll at least be there. You know, and you'll be there and you'll get a Citrus Bowl berth or something like that. And that's, you know, not a bad place to be. So when you're in that position where you're complaining about scheduling, you're never going to do it well. You're always going to insult somebody right. Or you're going to come off as a wuss or whatever it is. But, you know, like they are still trying to lobby at the league level to be like, we need a better chance here. So I get why Scott Frost did it, but I also get why Fred Glass circled it and said, we're using this against you later, buddy.